January 17th, 1968. It's just before 9 in the morning in Kon Tum Province, South Vietnam. A 19-year-old army cook named Jimmy Castellano is frozen in elephant grass, so tall it swallows him whole. His heart is pounding against his ribs. 8 hours ago, his biggest worry was making breakfast for hungry soldiers. But right now, through a thick wall of jungle just 50 meters away, he's watching 30 North Vietnamese soldiers unload wooden crates into hidden underground bunkers. The M16 rifle in his hands feels like a foreign object. His job is about scrambled eggs and powdered milk, not combat patrols. But what Jimmy Castellano doesn't know yet is that he has just stumbled upon the largest enemy ammunition depot in the entire Central Highlands region. 43 tons of rockets, grenades, and mortar shells, enough firepower to keep 3 enemy regiments fighting for 6 straight months. And he absolutely cannot imagine that his accidental discovery is about to trigger the most devastating airstrike in the history of the Third Corps, saving an estimated 300 American lives. To understand why a teenage cook crawling through the jungle mattered so much, you need to know how badly the Americans were losing the intelligence war in early 1968. The Central Highlands were a tactical nightmare. This wasn't open rice paddies. This was pure jungle. The terrain was so mountainous and the vegetation so thick that aerial photography was useless. The Ho Chi Minh Trail snaked through neighboring countries, funneling enemy soldiers and supplies into staging areas hidden beneath a triple canopy forest where sunlight never even touched the ground. American commanders threw everything they had at the problem: infrared cameras, seismic sensors, even chemical defoliants. They sent out long-range patrols and used indigenous tracker teams. Intelligence estimated that they were stopping less than 15% of enemy supplies. The other 85% just vanished into the endless green wilderness. The human cost was devastating. In the 2 months before January 1968, the area around Firebase Susan saw 73 separate enemy attacks. 42 Americans died. 137 were wounded. And every patrol came back with the same frustrating report: contact made, casualties taken, enemy gone. Colonel Thomas Henderson, the commander at Firebase Susan, his intelligence officer, estimated there were at least 6 major ammo dumps within 20 kilometers of their base. But finding even one would take a miracle. Analysts knew something big was coming. Radio intercepts and prisoner interrogations all pointed to a massive general offensive. But without finding those ammo reserves, American commanders couldn't strike first. All they could do was reinforce their defenses and wait for the hammer to fall. When Colonel Henderson made a small decision that changed everything. He ordered hot meal deliveries to the forward positions. Morale was dangerously low, and he hoped real food instead of cold cans might boost spirits. The logistics officer picked 3 mess hall workers for the detail. One of them was Private First Class James Castellano. Jimmy Castellano grew up in Astoria, Queens. His father owned an Italian restaurant where Jimmy learned to cook before he learned to drive. When he was drafted, food service seemed like the safest path. His older brother Marco had come back from 2 combat tours with shrapnel scars and nightmares. Jimmy wanted no part of that. For 3 months at Firebase Susan, he followed his father's advice perfectly. Keep your head down, stay in the kitchen, never volunteer. Then Colonel Henderson ordered those hot meal deliveries, and Jimmy's safe war ended forever. The convoy left at 6 in the morning on January 17th. 2 trucks rumbled through the monsoon drizzle. Jimmy was in the passenger seat, his rifle wedged awkwardly between his knees. The ambush struck 3 kilometers from their destination. One moment, there was only the sound of rain. The next, the windshield exploded. The driver, specialist, Danny Wilcox, screamed and floored it. The truck fishtailed wildly on the mud. Jimmy grabbed for something solid but found only air. The passenger door, which he hadn't latched properly, swung open. He was falling, tumbling through space, crashing into tall grass. When his vision cleared, the trucks were gone. The sound of their engines and sporadic gunfire faded into the distance. He was alone, in enemy territory, with no idea which way was safe. Every instinct told him to run back to the road, but he knew ambushers might still be waiting. He chose the jungle instead, moving away from the road, hoping to circle back to the firebase. 2 hours later, he was completely lost. Then, he heard voices. Through the thick vegetation, he saw 30 soldiers, stacked rifles, and wooden ammunition crates. This wasn't a patrol. It was a full-scale ammunition depot, hidden in plain sight. He watched for 7 agonizing minutes, memorizing every detail. Then he backed away slowly until the voices faded. He had to get back to Firebase Susan, but first, he needed to figure out where he was. That's when he made the decision that would become a legend. Jimmy Castellano climbed a tree. Jimmy hadn't climbed anything since he was a kid. Fear and desperation pushed him upward. His arms trembled, his palms tore against the rough bark. 60 feet up, he broke through the canopy into brilliant sunlight and could suddenly see for miles. To the northeast, there it was, Firebase Susan. He could see the radio antennas, the perimeter wire, the rooftops. He memorized the landmarks, climbed back down with bleeding hands, and started walking. The convoy had reported him missing, presumed dead or captured. When Jimmy started describing the ammunition depot, nobody believed him. The sergeant of the guard thought it was a stress-induced hallucination. But Jimmy demanded to see Colonel Henderson. Something in his absolute certainty made the colonel listen. Henderson ordered a reconnaissance flight. The pilot spotted the camouflage netting, just as Jimmy had described. Confirmation came in minutes. The depot was real. 4F for Phantom fighter bombers launched from Pleiku Air Base. They reached the target and began their attack runs. The first bombs struck at 4:07 p.m. Secondary explosions followed immediately as the stored ammunition started cooking off. At Firebase Susan, soldiers crowded the perimeter to watch. 43 tons of ammunition detonated in a chain reaction that lasted 7 full minutes. The shockwave flattened everything in a quarter-kilometer radius. When the smoke cleared, all that was left was a crater 200 meters wide. The largest enemy ammunition cache in the Central Highlands had ceased to exist. North Vietnamese forces launched coordinated attacks all across South Vietnam. Firebase Susan faced a battalion-strength assault, but the attackers were critically low on ammunition. Instead of the usual sustained rocket barrages, only 17 rockets struck the base. The battle lasted 6 hours. Firebase Susan held. American casualties were 4 killed and 23 wounded. The next morning, over 200 enemy soldiers were counted. The 66th NVA Regiment had issued orders complaining about severe ammo shortages after the destruction of their main supply depot. An official report concluded that the airstrike prevented an estimated 300 American casualties. Firebase Susan would likely have been overrun. On February 14th, General William Westmoreland visited Firebase Susan. He pinned a Bronze Star for Valor on Private First Class James Castellano's chest. The general never knew that Jimmy had frozen in fear during the ambush. He never knew that the Bronze Star recipient still woke up at night hearing Vietnamese voices in the dark. War transforms ordinary people, but it never makes them less human. Jimmy Castellano returned home in July 1968. He went back to his father's restaurant in Queens and worked there for 42 years. He rarely spoke about Vietnam. In 1995, a historian contacted him. "I fell out of a truck and got lucky. That is not heroism. I stumbled into them by accident. I saw something and I reported it. If that helped people survive, I am grateful. But I was just doing my job." James Castellano passed away in 2011. His bronze star is now in a museum at Fort Carson, Colorado. The placard calls him an unlikely hero who proved that courage takes many forms, and that any soldier, regardless of their job, can change history. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from careful planning, but from ordinary people responding to extraordinary moments with simple human courage, and that is simply the truth. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more stories like this.